This is PENSDOWN. Today I'm excited. I have one of my senior colleagues joining me here. It's going to be an exciting conversation. She is a seasoned communications professional who is currently the online editor for Ghana News Agency. She is also the executive director of Special Mothers Project, an advocacy entity that creates awareness about cerebral palsy and issues affecting families raising children with special needs. Her interests includes contributing to policy discussions to enhance policy formulation with regard to children with cerebral palsy and other special needs. One of her passions for advocacy is to see the full implementation of Ghana's inclusive education policy. She is a registered psychologist assistant with the Ghana Psychological Council and enjoys counseling families, especially mothers, raising or nurturing children with cerebral palsy and other disabilities. She is married with 3 children and also the author of 2 books, The Unexpected and Near Divorce. We'll be talking about near divorce, whatever that means. She's a product of the University of Ghana, where she read for her master's in contemporary English studies and bachelor's in psychology with linguistics. She also holds a diploma in mass communication from the Ghana Institute of Journalism. Hannah Awadzi, Mrs., is my guest today. Welcome to PENSDOWN.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. I'm so excited. I think for your conversation, we talk journalism journeys here, but you are an advocate for a cause that is extremely important. So that will also feature as part of our discussion. But how did you get into journalism? Some people tell me they were coerced into it. Others said it was an accident. Some said they nurtured it from childhood. What is your own story?
I think I liked reading and writing as a young girl.
Okay.
Growing up. I never thought about journalism as a profession, but I knew that I could express myself a lot in writing.
Okay.
When I was young, my father told me to be a pharmacist. So all along, when you ask me what I want to be, I'll say I'll be a pharmacist. Till I got to that time it was JSS3, and we were registering our courses for the secondary school. And then I said, oh, I don't think I can choose science. I wanted to do general arts. And it was a big problem in the family because my father is a science bias. His children should either be engineers or doctors or pharmacists or something, and nothing like general arts. Yeah. So he kept asking me, so this general arts, what will you do? And at that time, I didn't even know. But what I knew was that I love to read, and the general arts subject that I did gave me an opportunity to do some books. You know, literature, you do some books, the gods are not to blame, and all those things. So, and I love that. In Form 1, I was the best English student at Agri Memorial. Wow. So I knew I liked English and literature. So I think in Form 2, I told my father that I would like to be a journalist. And I remember how he laughed. He laughed and said, I mean, we'll be watching TV in the house and he will call me and say, come and see. You know how they capture the parliament press call? Right. He'll come and see what you want to do. These are the people. Exactly, you laugh. But I think down the line, it's not been a regret. I think it's a path that God wanted me to be on. And I'm excited that I've been on that path.
Before we continue, my guest today has a qualification in English language. That puts me under a lot of pressure. So I want to issue this disclaimer that whatever mistakes I make is because of the pressure she's bringing to the table today. Right. So against your father's wish, you pursued your interest, and here you are today. Is he when you got in and things started happening, you started working, writing, getting your stories out there, did he begin to warm up to it, or his stance is still the same?
I think he's very proud of me now
Oh
for
wow.
pursuing my dreams. You
Wow.
know,
Wow.
yes. And I think it also made him change his stance on my other siblings. I'm the first of other
Okay.
siblings. So
Okay.
for the other siblings, he wasn't hard on do this and do that.
Mm.
You know, he allowed them to do what they wanted to do
Mm.
because he saw me excel in a field that I want to be in,
Mm.
and he likes it. So my other siblings are able to also follow their path.
Wow. So somebody decided to disrupt the status quo.
Yeah.
And thankfully, that's opened the floodgates for other siblings to also maximize their own potential without
Sure.
overlooking their shoulder that their father might be complaining. I said you
Yeah.
should do this, I said you should do that. Right. Um, you've done journalism for over 2 decades. What has kept you this long? There's a lot of attrition. I'm sure now, if you turn, you may not see so many of your mates, even juniors, around.
Yeah.
What has kept you here?
Okay, it's a number of factors, but
Mm,
I think the first thing is the interest to write,
okay.
coupled with the passion with which
Mm,
I write.
yeah.
And if I say the interest to write and the passion to write, it's not just about going on assignments and covering stories.
Mm,
I am one person who will see an issue in society and can decide to tackle it.
okay.
You know, so I can be on an issue for a very long time.
Mm,
Fulfillment is seeing change
yeah.
from the articles I'm writing and all those
Mm,
things. And I also think that I write to distress is one of the
oh,
things I do. So
oh.
when things are flooding my mind, I like journaling a lot and I'll put down a lot of things, which serves as a point of information for a lot of other people.
Mm,
And that makes me happy. That has kept me.
wow. Now, one thing about journalism is that it sells the professional. Ghana News Agency is a wire service that operates virtually in anonymity.
Yes.
Don't you feel you are being unmarketed? It is you are not being marketed because your name never goes with any story. I'm told currently you put
Yeah.
out stories that come with bylines, but
Yeah.
for a long time that was the practice. Um, have have you not ever been worried that you are not being marketed enough? How will people connect you to this story, no matter the impact, which you know you are the one who wrote? What has kept you there for this long without thinking twice that you need somewhere that they will be putting your name under? Hannah Awadzi reporting from the presidency, reporting from so and so.
Mm. Yes, I think that issue is of a valid concern,
Mm.
especially when we started. Some of the people I started with in the media, who I
Mm.
used to go on assignments with, includes Nana Yabrefo now of
Oh,
Angel and those, and I could hear their names, and
yeah.
I couldn't hear mine. Initially, it was a concern.
Mm.
It was a concern, but a lot of things have kept me here,
Okay.
including family life.
Okay.
Yes, this place gives me flexibility, a lot of
Okay.
flexibility to navigate myself, take
Okay.
care of my family, and also
Okay.
take care of myself. So that has been the biggest hold down.
Okay.
The fact that I can the fact that I can be able to keep a job and
Mm.
maintain a family and have a balance
Okay.
without the pressures of each
Mm.
distracting each other has kept me here. But like you said, it's of real concern when you are not connected to the stories or the things you do, and no one knows you, kind of.
Because
Yeah.
especially when you have an avid critic in your home, maybe in the past, in your father, who was not too excited about that path and will want to see your progression over the years, but is unable to connect your name and even boast about, this story that they said he did and this person, this community got water, it was my daughter who did it. You know, that those are some of the real challenges.
Yeah.
Will you say journalism pays? Does it pay?
So in terms of money, it doesn't pay. In terms of fulfillment, it does.
Okay.
So and fulfillment leads you to a lot of things. You know. So I put up my stories with the best of intentions and with the mind to make something beneficial for humanity.
Okay.
And even though the job doesn't pay me directly, in the end you get other things that pays you. But the job doesn't pay directly.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Have you ever been approached with a bribe in the line of duty before?
A bribe.
Have you ever been approached?
I don't think so. I think I have a kind of personality that keeps people away when they want to do some things that are not are not right. And I am very forthright with my opinions and thoughts when it comes to certain things. So certain things don't even come to me at all. If the story has to be reported, I will do it. And damning the consequences, I will do it. So certain things don't come to me at all.
Indeed,
And I
what you
also
have
don't.
said reminds me of what the one of the GW correspondents in West Africa told me. She told me that those who pay bribes actually know the journalists who can be bribed.
I think so. I think so.
That's interesting. You are the online editor. Now, the younger brother of online is social media, or is it the elder brother? I don't know which is which.
Yeah.
Social media, how is it redefining journalism practice?
It is redefining it in many ways. You know, in the past when there was only mainstream, there were issues that would have gone unnoticed, even important issues.
Yeah.
But with social media, an ordinary citizen journalist can take up an issue and it becomes a big issue that forces the government to come respond to it. So, for instance, there in last year December there was this campaign against Nestle products, the milk and stuff like that.
That's right.
It
Yeah.
was started by someone who saw that this was happening.
Yeah.
Maybe mainstream journalism would have killed that such a story, knowing the kind of industry that we work
That's
in.
right.
There are others. Even the current issue about Verna mineral water, all those things are started by.
Yes, even with that one, some journalists are bending over backwards to help
Yeah.
them conceal
Yes.
things and all that. Yeah.
So I think that social media has done a lot in terms of redefining what affects the people. The journalism that we practiced years back was just reporting sometimes what the politicians says against what is happening on the ground. So one of my biggest concern as a journalist has been the big gap between policy as it is on paper and the actual that happens. There's a very big gap. They will come and read the speeches. Oh, this has happened. Government has done this. SDGs, we've achieved it.
Yeah.
But when you talk to the people, when you see the people, you see that that is not happening, and that is what social media has allowed us to be unraveling. Something that the mainstream journalists may not have pursued in any way.
Manasseh Azuri Awuni told me that journalists have lost monopoly over breaking news because of social media. Do you agree with him?
I agree, absolutely.
In fact, he created a scenario that, for instance, we all know TV3 where it is. Let's assume something happens at the bus stop in front of TV3. Anybody with a camera there can stream it live on social media before TV3 gathers their cameras and light and sound and reporter
Exactly.
and everything to even come to their own frontage to
Yeah.
capture.
Yeah.
Wow. So, in your own personal life as a journalist, how has social media aided your work?
Okay, so for me,
Mm,
I see the positives in social media more than the negatives.
mm,
And I took to social media somewhere in 2011.
okay.
Yes.
Mm,
After I had my daughter who had cerebral palsy.
yeah.
I used to have you spend a lot of time with her. And so
Mm,
it didn't allow me to go out a lot.
okay.
And at that time, social media was my connecting point.
Okay.
It was a point where I could connect with people, I
Mm,
could share experiences, and I could impact.
mm,
So that was when I took to social media. Even though I went to study online journalism at the Radio Netherlands Training Center in 2007, I
okay.
wasn't using it and I wasn't seeing social media till then.
Mm,
But social media has changed a lot in terms of journalism. Social media has changed a lot in terms of journalism. A
mm,
lot has changed. And I see the positives, even though there are a lot of negatives. I am one positive person who always want to highlight what the positive says over what
mm,
the negative says. I
mm,
am sure that if we all decide to play up the positives, with time, the negatives will be drawn.
mm.
It will go down. So for me,
Right.
social media has been great.
Matters of disability, for obvious reasons, are very dear to your heart.
Yeah.
I hosted Ghana's first visually impaired TV newscaster on the show, Paul Anomakodie. He works with
Oh,
ETV Ghana. And one of the things he told me is that he says one thing he finds frustrating and sometimes even irritating is the unsolicited assistance people want to give whenever they meet him in town. Um, because they see him with a walking stick, everybody will want to help or, without asking for it. Are you also grappling with say?
okay, so disability is diverse.
Mm,
So when you see a person who is visually impaired,
mm,
the likelihood is to think that, oh, the person can't do anything and to try and
mm,
help. With other disabilities, for
mm,
instance, what I deal with it with my
mm.
daughter is cerebral palsy. You
Yeah.
actually need people to help you physically.
Okay.
you know
Okay.
so I think it's an understanding of disability in Ghana
Mm,
that needs to be upgraded.
mm,
First, we think that, oh, everybody with disability is so vulnerable and they can't do anything,
mm,
and so many other things come to our mind. But since I started working in the disability sector and reporting on disability,
mm,
I have been totally inspired by the people I meet.
mm.
There's a man called Mr. Alexander Bankole Williams. He's also
Okay.
visually impaired. He works at the
Wow.
University of Ghana, and he is the advocacy chairman for Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations.
Okay.
This man is a single father to a daughter who is able.
Really?
Yes, he's a single father to a daughter who is able. He's a lawyer, and I see the kind of lives they lead, and I go like, wow, we don't have any knowledge about disability at all.
Mm,
Yes, our knowledge about disability is to pity and sympathy and
yeah.
those things, but not to empathize and know what
Mm,
their real challenges are and work
mm,
towards helping them to achieve them.
mm. Ghana passed the disability law, I think almost, if not 2 decades, it's
Yeah,
almost. But a lot of places of access are not friendly to the
yeah,
disabled. I
yeah,
am sure it will remain one of your biggest concerns as one of the chief advocates in this
yeah,
area.
yeah.
Uh, Even government structures that are being put up today, some of them are not compliant. Are we a people who are given to signaling right and taking left, or we take these matters seriously, but they are too complex to provide, so we can't help it?
I don't think they are too complex to provide. I
Mm,
told you earlier in our discussion that there's a huge gap between the policy that we have and what actually happens.
mm,
Because for other countries, in other developed countries, before you signal
mm,
to a policy, any of these UN things, you would have put in structures to make sure that things will work.
mm,
But not here. We are happy to say that, oh, Ghana is a signatory to this, Ghana is a signatory to this, without looking at what the real impact of those signatories that we append to on
mm.
the people. So we like to talk.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, empty talk without
Mm,
action.
mm,
So you will have a government official boast about the fact that, oh, we are now ratifying a new bill on disability, and the person has no idea how people are suffering because they can't access anywhere.
mm.
I
In the
keep
early
telling people
days,
that
in the
my
early
daughter,
days, yeah,
sorry,
in the early days of your daughter's birth,
yeah.
at what point did you come to the reality that this is who she is, or this is the challenge she has? And how did you psychologically settle down to accept and bear the full brunt of what was, unfolding?
I think acceptance is a key to anything, any
Mm,
situation you find yourself in life.
mm, mm.
So I tell my story becomes incomplete if I don't mention Farida.
Yes,
I had
Farida.
yes, I had met Farida way
Mm,
before I got married, and
okay,
but I knew her at a distance.
okay.
Yes. So when my daughter was given the diagnosis, I
Mm,
remember that I had heard this word cerebral palsy before, but I
mm,
couldn't point to it.
okay.
So I settled down on my computer trying to search about
Mm,
cerebral palsy as a word, and a
mm,
lot of things came up, which scared me and made me feel, hey, how am I going to do it? But since Farida's name also comes up,
okay, yeah.
so I went chasing, looking
Mm,
for her again, and trying to find out how she had lived her life.
mm,
Um, the initial thing was to be depressed and to deny the situation and to be angry and
mm,
think that it was not real. But I came to acceptance really quick after I have
mm,
gone through those emotions.
mm,
And I realized that I needed to embrace it and work with it. And
mm.
one of the ways to work with it was to help myself and help others in those situations.
Okay.
I mean, I tell parents that you can't be sitting down crying because you have a child with disability. What next?
It won't change the situation.
So the question what next needs to be answered. And once you find yourself answering it rightly, you will help yourself and you will be able to help others.
Mm, wow. So far, what have been some of the key challenges you've had? Sometimes moving around with her, and I mean, obviously in societies like this, you are going to have things like curious tests. I don't know if you even pay attention to them at all. Maybe now you might have grown numb to them because you want to move on with your life and ignore what people think. What are some of the things people do that sometimes it gets to you or makes you feel frustrated that this society really does not seem to have a place for such special needs people?
I think the thing that frustrates me the most about my daughter is the lack of working policies
Mm,
for children like her.
mm,
So the average family with a child with cerebral palsy can't take their child to school unless you are very rich in Ghana. Um,
wow.
yes,
Wow.
you can't take your child to school. It's difficult giving them social life.
Mm,
It's easier to lock them up in a room than to bring them
mm,
out because you have to be carrying them and they get heavy with
mm,
time, they grow.
yeah.
So, like, I'm climbing the stairs and I'm going with her. I have to be carrying a 9-year-old child with me.
Wow.
So, those are the frustrations that comes with it. If the policies were working and every place had a ramp or a lift, and people had an understanding of disability and those things, there were some doors we wouldn't have knocked because of disability.
Okay.
But because there are no working policies, it's a lot of frustration, just having them and moving around with them.
Let's go back to social media because you're an online person.
Yeah.
Social media has created richer bloggers than richer journalists.
Exactly.
Where did we miss it? Why are scarcely trained people who have little or no knowledge in the media making millions, while a lot of journalists seem to be grappling with the very basics of social media? Where did we miss it?
Okay, so we focus on maybe what the politician is saying. They focus on what the people are saying, and the people want to hear their voices. The people want to hear their voices. So maybe the woman who died, Equia Dente, the woman who was accused of witchcraft and was stoned to death, perhaps her story will never have come up to light if it was left to just mainstream trained professional journalism. We would have picked the president speaking or the minister speaking over that act. You know, but there are people, there are vulnerable people whose voices needs to be heard, and we are not giving them the voice. The blogger who is not trained is giving that person a voice. So the person will follow the blogger and get their family and friends to follow the blogger. While mainstream journalism remain a boring place where you want to go read about government policies that are not working, government policies that are not working and are impacting your life in any way.
You've done over 20 years. Is there any end in sight for you in this journey? At what point are you going to drop your pen?
Okay. I don't think I'll drop the pen. Maybe I'll not continue professionally as a journalist with the years to come, but I'll always like to write. And one of the people that inspires me even now is Miss Elizabeth Ohene.
Okay.
Who still writes her interesting columns in the graphic, and once you pick it up, you want to continue reading because she has some interesting things to say. So as for, they say once a soldier, always a soldier. Once a writer. And when I've even gone to write books and others, I will continue to write. But maybe I will not continue professionally as a journalist. So I think with time, I would like to upgrade a little bit more and branch into something else, research, to enrich society's knowledge in how we do things.
If we are to go back into time, 30 years, are you still going to choose the same path?
I love writing. I love writing, and I get fulfilled. I get fulfilled when, like you said, because it's GNA and because I do my things with a lot of modesty. Some of the things I do may never show my face or point to me, but I sit in my corner and I see things happening and I nod. So even within the disability thing, I have been able to contribute immensely to reviewing some policies. The early childhood care and development policy. I have been part of a committee that has reviewed Ghana's disability law now. I have been an integral part in terms of the GFD's advocacy with regards to children. We've done a lot of things that nobody points to you, but you sit down and you feel fulfilled that you are bringing change to the next person. And it's through what I do.
You see, one thing is medical professionals advise against a sick doctor administering medicine to himself, a lawyer representing himself. Sometimes they feel in that jaundice position, you could make avoidable mistakes.
Yeah.
I am saying this as an aside to your reality. Have there been times that in your advocacy, your own experience have so gotten a better part of you that you got much more emotional, maybe, than you should have?
I am sure it might have happened. Yes. But even before I got into mainstream advocacy like I'm doing now, I knew that journalism was an advocacy tool
Okay.
that served to change society. If you wanted to create a change, one of the tools you used was the media.
Okay.
And in advocacy, you cannot underplay lived experiences. You know, so in the case of doctors, because you are working on, you can't work on yourself in that
Yeah.
sense. But
Yeah.
in advocacy, sharing a personal experience is a powerful tool to
Oh,
get
okay.
people to connect to what is happening. So when I talk about children with disability and children with special needs and all those things, the connecting point is my daughter. It's a
Okay.
lived experience. So I'm not saying someone's story without, but I'm saying a story that I have lived that has also affected another person and another person and another person. So that creates a very powerful connection to families that can relate to it. So in advocacy, lived experience is a powerful tool.
Mm. Mm. There are a lot of media houses that are springing up with the fingerprints of politicians all over the place. The increasing political ownership of the media. As a democracy, do we have a reason to worry?
It's a yes and no.
Okay.
If they are not infiltrating too much into content, then you can decide that okay, they are also giving a space for the public to voice out.
Okay.
Where they infiltrate into your content, then there is a cause for worry because they teach you what to say, they teach you what to think,
That's right.
and what path to follow. I think that every journalist should be an independent minded person who can make a decision, look at the government policy and be able to say that yes, this works for me or this doesn't work for me. Because we are first citizens.
Yes.
Before taking up anything, any profession, you are a citizen and the policies will affect you one way or the other. So to be independent to say that, okay, this policy, I think it will affect us as a people this way, is more important than aligning to a political party. If they are opening media houses because they want voices, that is good. If they are opening up media houses because they want us to hear just their voice, that is dangerous.
Mm. There are calls on this platform, PENSDOWN, for the licensing of journalists. Should journalists be licensed?
Um, that's, I think yes. I think yes. So every profession, whether it comes natural or not,
Okay.
there should be rules and guidelines to guide you in what you do. So when I started speaking, I said that as a child, I loved writing, and I take steps to go to school to perfect my skills as a person who wants to write, so that
Yeah.
when I'm writing, I am guided by the ethics. Every
Yeah.
profession has ethics. So I think that it is important when we do that. It will deal with all the other extremes that we have recorded, which shouldn't be.
Are there any golden memories to share? These over 2 decades you've been holding your pen.
Yes.
Okay.
I've once been the best journalist in, I think in 2010, I was the
Okay.
best journalist in environmental and sanitation issues.
Okay.
And I was honored during the GJ Awards.
Okay.
And I've also had been honored as the best tourism reporter somewhere in 2009
Okay.
by the ministry and by the Ghana Tourist Board.
Okay.
Yes. But I think for me, the biggest thing is how I have impacted lives with my voice and with what I write.
Mm.
And there are many times I've done columns in a lot of newspapers aside just working with the Ghana News Agency. And there are many times people will call you and say, I read this column and I didn't even know it was you who wrote it, but I picked it. Those are my golden moments.
Wow. Let's talk about Solly. Give me your take.
I am not for it.
Mm.
I think we should be paid well,
Okay.
journalists.
Mm.
And if you are paid well, a lot of things will not even come to mind.
Okay.
So as a journalist, I don't want to be giving money because you want me to report favorably for the
Mm.
event I came to cover.
Mm.
However, looking at the state of how our media houses are now,
Mm.
the fact that people have worked in media houses for years without even being paid, and their only
Yes.
source of livelihood is that, I think that we can't just condemn it totally.
Mm.
I wish that every journalist, like you are saying, the licensing thing will come to pass, and then you are paid well, you are able to put value on yourself, and then we can sanitize the space.
Mm. I think that is what Shamima summarized when I engaged her. She said, Solé is not bribe, but if it is taken out, it will do the profession a lot of good.
It will. It
Mm.
will.
What stands out as your most challenging assignment or assignments, if it's not only one?
Okay. I don't think I can even point to, okay, so I stopped going out on the regular assignments long ago, about 10
Okay.
years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
Mm.
So most of the time I do stories that I stumble upon.
Okay.
Like I'm in the market, something has happened, or there's an issue which I feel passionately to follow, and then I do. But
Mm.
those times when I was reporting, as in going on assignment, one of
Mm.
the things I used to do was to ensure that I understand the communication going on there. So
Okay.
when I go out, I make sure that I understand the issues very well.
Mm.
And the question I always asked myself, no matter what they were talking about, was how does this affect me as a Ghanaian?
Mm.
And from there, I picked my angles
Mm.
to write about these things. So I might not be able to point a very challenging assignment that I went and I couldn't understand. I always
Mm.
will ask questions, but there's one assignment that comes to mind just now as we talked.
Okay.
There was an organization, I can't remember now, but they
Mm.
were talking about laying cables or something in the telecom industry.
Okay.
And as I sat down, I think that assignment was at La Palm.
Mm.
They kept mentioning fiber optics and fiber optics, and I was like, everybody was quiet. So when when it was time for questions, I raised my hands and I said, pardon my ignorance, but please, can you explain to me what fiber optics? And I remember everybody in the room started laughing, but they explained it, and then I got it. And then guess what? When we closed from the assignment, three other journalists came to me and said, Hannah, can you explain what fiber optics is? Because I did. Most of us copy and paste speeches.
Yeah.
We don't understand what goes on. We just copy. Oh, he said that, we copy and paste, especially in the page where we want our stories to come up fast in this
Yes.
online thing. We just
Yes.
copy and paste without
Mm.
understanding what happens. But I always tell myself that ask yourself the things they are discussing in the assignment room at the press conference or whatever. How is it going to impact you as a
Mm.
Ghanaian? If you are able to answer that, that should be your angle for your story.
Mm. What's your assessment of the quality of journalism in Ghana today? You have had the benefit of more than 2 decades, so you've seen journalism evolve over the years. Are we doing better? Is there more room for improvement? Are things sinking? Or are we in trouble already?
I think there's always more room for improvement.
Mm.
The key is to understand and love what you do.
Mm.
So it shouldn't be just a job.
Okay.
So if it's just a job, then you will always look for the bylines. And you don't care what you've written. You don't care what impact it has on people. The money comes first for you. But if
Mm.
it's about a passion, making an impact, and doing something worthwhile, then you will look at other things before just seeing it as a job.
Mm.
And when I scan the media space, there are people who are doing these things with passion, and
Mm.
there are those who are doing it for the sake of having a job.
Mm.
It's divided.
Mm.
So, in terms of quality, I think we can do better.
Mm.
I think that the newsrooms should groom the young ones that come
Okay.
into that space.
Mm.
Of course, there are people who stumble into it,
Mm.
and maybe with time they come to like it. And there are
Mm.
those who it's a path they've chosen to tread and they
Yeah.
will excel in it. So grooming them at the newsroom level and getting them to understand what it stands for as a
Mm.
profession is important.
Mm. You have a background in psychology.
Yeah.
With your advocacy on disability, when you construct a mind map of the leadership of this country, irrespective of whether they are in power or not, are you able to convincingly tell yourself that they mean well for for the disabled, or they actually have the issues of the disabled at heart?
Sometimes I think there's a lot of ignorance
Mm.
in leadership.
Mm.
And this is an important question. We formulate, the people find themselves in leadership and they are supposed to formulate laws and policies that guides the people and helps the people. But if you have no idea what is happening to the people, how do you formulate good, effective policies?
Mm.
So we haven't done our work well as in terms of leadership as a country, we haven't done our work well, or we are just ignorant
Mm.
as leadership in the country because for instance, and I know disability, for instance, they used to, they had this inclusive education policy
Mm.
without talking to the people that it affects most, parents.
Mm.
So they will gather a group of teachers who have gone to do special education or something, and they come to one room and they do whatever, and then they do policy research validation without the people who are supposed to be affected. So
Mm.
how will our policies work? How will it make any impact? There's a lot of ignorance among our leadership. And I think that it's time that people who put themselves up for political positions and whatever
Mm.
get trained on issues.
Mm.
You need to get trained and get really briefed about
Mm.
what the issues are. So they don't just get there and assume that I
Mm.
think this will work.
Mm.
I am veering into something like the free SHS
Okay.
policy.
Yeah. Mm.
For the average person without thinking, you
Mm.
think, oh, this is such a good thing.
A
Of
fantastic
course,
policy.
everybody wants something free. Who
Mm.
doesn't like it?
Yeah.
But maybe if leadership had done their research well, they
Mm.
would have known that at a point the country was going to be stuck. because there is no free lunch really.
Yeah. Somebody
People,
actually has to pay for the free lunch.
yes, and people need to know that there can't be there can't be there's responsibility before whatever demand or whatever. So you
Yeah.
can't. People need to be trained to be responsible citizens.
Mm.
People out there, they value the cost of everything, even if they are giving you for free. We don't do all these things and we just go ahead and formulate policies that may not touch on the people
Mm.
in any way.
Mm. Is the issue of stigmatization of the disabled still pronounced in this country?
Yes. it is, but I think that it depends on the people themselves.
Mm.
So I mentioned a lawyer who is blind, who is a single parent, and
Yeah.
I don't think that you can stigmatize that man anytime, any day, just
Mm.
because of how he carries himself,
Mm.
you know. So someone the same, maybe with the same kind of disability, visually impaired, is
Mm.
there on the street begging.
Mm.
Then he is a lawyer, he's a single father, he's dad, so
Mm.
stigmatization also depends on how the people understand themselves
Mm.
and how they portray themselves. But of course, if we are not portraying disability well, and if we are not understanding what disability is, then we are likely to stigmatize disability.
Is your daughter, is she your first?
Yes.
I'm curious, and forgive me if it sounds a bit too personal.
No.
When you gave birth to her and you realized that this is the special needs she had, did it for any reason completely dry out your interest in maybe getting a second or a third child or
It did. It really did. And I tell people that somehow she's my only planned child. The other two
oh
were not planned. So
oh
I have two after her. They
okay.
were not planned. They were gifted by God. She was the one that I prayed and prayed and said, "Oh, I
Oh, I
wanted
see.
this."
Uh,
Yes.
wow, wow. And in terms of her education, how do you measure progress?
It is very difficult.
Hmm.
It's very difficult because as right now she doesn't verbalize.
Okay.
Yeah, so when she wants something, she can point or make
Mm,
some sounds, but you have to think to understand
mm,
her. So
mm,
when she is in mainstream education, it's
mm,
difficult to assess her progress
mm,
in any way. What I'm doing is that I'm trying her with a lot of things.
mm,
We've tried swimming sometimes, we've tried music, we try things that will be of interest to her.
mm,
And as she grows, we hope to be able to define a path for her.
mm, mm.
My hope is that education is just not mainstream and it's not just academic.
That's right.
Yes,
I'm looking at it holistically.
yes.
Mm.
So for instance, she does a lot with her tablet in the
Okay.
house.
Okay.
She knows the YouTube icon. She can
Oh,
go
wow.
there. She
Mm,
knows what cartoons she wants to watch. And
mm,
so some of those things are things I'm exploring with her, and hoping that she will chart a path that will become beneficial to her.
mm. What's the relationship with her other siblings like?
Just like any other siblings, they
Mm,
play with her, they
mm.
fight with her,
They
they beat
fight.
her.
My good.
They beat her when there's a need. I think her brother after her they are just a year apart, so he
Okay.
is more protective. But they
Oh.
fight and play
Mm,
together
mm.
like any other person children will do.
After your training at Ghana Institute of Journalism, when you entered the field of practice, was there a yawning gap between the classroom thing and the reality? or it wasn't too much of a difference?
So mine was the other way. So after secondary school,
Okay.
I did a course with the Institute of Commercial Management in journalism, and then I started working. That
Oh,
that
okay.
course that course was primarily online.
Yes.
So I most of the time read myself and whatever. So I went to GIJ after I had been employed at GNA 5 years or more.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
when I went to GIJ, it was just kind of revision, whatever for me.
Okay.
It wasn't going to
Mm.
learn it and then coming to practice.
Sometimes also for, especially for those who go to GIG after some years of practice, a number of things become frustrating when they are unable to have their way. I remember when we went for top up after our diploma, when we do a top up for a degree, we had the benefit of field experience. So we felt that in answering questions during exam, we needed to bring that reality to bear. But sometimes you had a lecturer who also did not appreciate your desire to become overly practical. So it got
Mhm.
frustrating. Something that would be marked wrong practically is correct, but theoretically is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Did you experience something like that?
I did. I did. And I think I've experienced it in all my higher education.
Oh.
I did a master's degree in English,
Mm.
and you know we'll be in the classroom when someone is coming to teach you grammar, and they'll say pick a new paper and mark the tenses and whatever. And
Mm.
I'm there thinking, I actually write without the tenses, the consciousness of the tenses and whatever,
Yeah.
because it's become part of me. But
Mm.
now I'm supposed to be conscious to break down words in a newspaper into the tenses and to mark which is an adjunct tense. And it was really a
Yeah.
frustrating
Mm.
thing for me. But I guess it's one of those things we have to deal with.
Mm. Editors and proofreaders fight a lot. How many times have you had clashes with your proofreader? That is, if you deal with any.
I a few times, yes, a few
Mm.
times I'll say, oh, I think that this should be rather than that. We talk it out. Sometimes I lose, sometimes the person loses, but we move on.
Mm.
I think it's also part of enhancing and we learn every day.
Yeah, yeah.
We learn
But
every day.
but tell me, what exactly is the line of demarcation between editing and proofreading?
I think that from my layman's and
Mm.
understanding, the proofreader will be the one to cross the T's and dot the I's if we were still
Mm.
using the
That's
pens.
right. Yeah.
The editor wants to ensure that the article I'm reading is making sense not just to the person who wrote it, but
Mm.
to the next person who will read it who wasn't there.
Okay.
So they kind of shape the
Mm.
story into what is acceptable, into
Mm.
what people will understand, into what people will identify with,
Mm.
using the right wordings and all those things to
Mm.
ensure that communication is achieved.
Mm. Some senior colleagues have engaged here tell me the new generation of journalists that are being produced, despite the enormous opportunities available to them, some of them come empty. They actually don't represent the kind of burden quality you expect. In your position, I'm sure a number of people also work under you. What has been your experience?
Okay, so you know when you go to GIJ or any,
AUCC.
yeah,
Yeah,
you are not trained to be an expert in the field,
that's right.
but you come out and for instance someone will just align and say I'm an environmental journalist or I'm a health whatever
Mm.
without even knowing the details. I now talk about disability because I've reported in the sector over years. Over years now, I understand the terms, I understand what should be used and what should not be used. But even then, we are learning. Even then, we are learning. So, for instance, if I'm reporting on any kind of disability, one of the important questions to ask is how do you want me to describe you? You know, but people throw things. So they say, oh, now don't say blind, say visually impaired. I know a man who will say, call me a blind man because I am blind. You know, so some of those things are learned on the job.
Okay.
And it's just when you open yourself up and you are ready to learn and absorb a lot that you become an expert in a field. So you don't just come and achieve it. The humility to learn, despite whatever you have, will help you to get to the top of what you want to do.
This has been PENSDOWN. Hannah Awadzi. She's a Mrs. Let me add that. She's been my guest today. This conversation has been like a salad, all inclusive. We've spoken journalism, we've spoken disability, and she's also thrown out some of the ways she's held her own against the daunting challenges she's dealing with, in her own life. Thanks a lot for your time. Truly honored.
It's a pleasure to have me in the noisy GNA newsroom.
It adds to the humanity around the conversation, so I'm very grateful for your time. This has been PENSDOWN, and today we've had the company of my senior colleague, one of the editors at GNA. She's actually the online editor for the Ghana News Agency. That's a big position, but the way she carries things about, she wants us to be able to just a simple something. It is somebody's dream position that she's occupying today. And she says she has no idea when she intends to drop her pen. I hosted Mr. Francis Kokuche here. He has done 45 years in journalism.
Wow.
When I asked him when he's retiring, he says, I love writing. That's all he said. I don't even know how to take that as whether to call it a retirement statement or a no, I will never retire statement. I think we may be having his female version in you, since you have also refused to disclose. But thank you for your time. Truly grateful. Truly grateful. We'll be back next time with another edition when we engage another colleague for a conversation on their journalism journey. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.